basically talked to Charles Vallow for hours, went on a date with him on July 10th, the day before he died. He was charming and funny and awesome. He was very fit and strong. So again, getting a couple little facts sprinkled in there. He was very kind about Lori, especially after everything this witness had heard him say about Lori. Okay. Not a ton, really not a ton. Okay. This witness did not have to be that important of a witness. Lori Vallow, frankly, could have asked her no questions, sat down, and I'm not sure a jury would have even remembered her. Basically, we knew they were talking about Lori. It was obviously something bad. We don't know what it was, but he was nice about Lori, which if I'm a lawyer, I'm thinking Charles Vallow was being so kind about Lori. They didn't hate each other. They weren't at each other's throats. Things were actually pretty good. Even Charles's new girlfriend said that. He was mad because she was having an affair potentially. Okay. And then the state got that Charles was fit. And if he was fit, then if he would have hit somebody with a bat, maybe it would have hurt worse than the injury that Alex Cox allegedly had. Okay? That could have been it. That could have been it. But instead, Lori Vallow goes on one of her longer crosses of this entire trial, calls Charles Vallow her husband the entire time, is in a jealous, just back and forth with this witness, clearly does not know where it's going because she almost steps in it multiple times, and you'll see the judge warn her over and over again, and she still almost does it. Truly, it's so hard to even explain this without watching it. So let's take a listen to how Lori Vallow did. By the way, as a lawyer, you either don't cross this witness or you get 1 or 2 points and you move in and out, right? And that's it. Even sometimes with cops, like Lori Vallow's done okay with some of the cops in this case, but if you remember how the cops have worked into this case, they didn't show up and knock down Lori Vallow's door and handcuff her and drag her out, right? Because some defendants hate those cops and they can't cross those cops because they get so angry when they think about what those cops did. In this situation, the cops ended up on Lori Vallow's side. So she's been okay crossing a lot of the law enforcement, fire department, things like that. But this is the first witness it seems like she's really got some personal feelings against. Because the next witness, which is another lay female witness who seemed like a friend of Lori Vallow's, she didn't even cross-examine her. So we're going to watch this entire cross together.
Nancy Jo, right?
Correct.
And we have not met before, correct?
We have not.
Okay. And you stated that your husband, or my husband, told you that he was going through a divorce. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your husband, I mean my husband, was that a Freudian slip?
And did you have any way to verify that?
No, I didn't try to verify that.
Okay. So did it surprise you later to...
I hope that nobody ever gets divorced and everybody always lives happily ever after. I am going to assume that most people on the jury, if you have any clue what dating apps are, you don't confirm and like do a background check to confirm that somebody's in the middle of getting a divorce, right? But she's going to go in and try to make Nancy Jo look horrible for dating a married man, basically. That's her strategy on cross to start.
To find out that we were not in the process of it? Okay. So did it surprise you later to find out that we were not in the process of a divorce?
She's like,
Charles was in the process of a divorce.
He was not.
Nancy Jo's like, maybe you didn't know it, but Charles was in the process of a divorce. Trust me.
Not in the process of a divorce. Did it surprise you to find that out? You've seen it all on TV where we're not getting divorced.
By the way, I'm going to stop this a lot because just to realize how bad it is, she says so many bad things in a row that we have to stop it a lot. So number one, she's like, did it surprise you to find out we weren't? The state could have objected that Lori Vallow is clearly testifying. Lori Vallow is testifying. Not supposed to. That's not in evidence. You don't testify while you're asking questions. But the state's like, no, go ahead. Dig your own grave here. And then she says, you watched it all unfold on TV. So basically now, making sure if anybody on the jury didn't know, this is a nationwide story. This is something everybody's talking about. Usually you don't want to do that in front of the jury.
Okay.
She's like, okay.
So on the website that you met him, did he say he was divorced?
I'm not certain.
Would you have gone on a date with him if he would have said he was married?
If I would have realized how married he still was, maybe not. But I just met for dinner. I wasn't sleeping with him or anything.
Do you go on dates with married men?
Like literally, she's trying to attack Nancy Joe's character here for being on a dating app and going on a date with Charles Vallow while Lori is engaged in an affair with Chad Daybell, who she eventually marries. Like, just think about that. Is like, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can think of some diagnoses for Lori Vallow.
I'm going
Not
to
naturally?
argumentative. I'm going to also object under 611 for harassment.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
So I don't quite think she got to harassment. I think if a lawyer was asking some questions like this, I don't think it rises to the level of harassment yet. Eventually, I do think she gets there. So that's kind of annoying when the state does stuff like that, especially when the judge sustains it. Later, I think the judge realized, like, to sustain a harassment objection in front of the jury when the defendant is the lawyer. I know people are going to hate on me for this, but you really try to protect a pro se defendant, even though they're getting what they wanted, right? But later, the judge is like, sustained for relevant for that objection, not for harassment, when the state objects again for harassment.
Your Honor, do I not have a right to cross-examine this witness for what she has already testified to?
You can cross-examine her about what she's testified to.
So you did go on a date with a married man,
I went on a date with Charles.
but you did not know he was married.
I knew his divorce was not final.
His divorce was not started.
Okay.
Nancy is, I'll just tell you also, like, sometimes you can just immediately tell certain people are smart. She seems like a smart individual to me. She's not going to get into the mud with Lori Vallow too much. She definitely takes her moments to jab back, but she's not going to, when she agrees with her, it's almost like, you know, when you're fighting with somebody and you're like, okay, you know, it's like you said, okay, but you clearly didn't mean okay. She does stuff like that where I think she comes off as like, I know why I'm here. This sucks. We're here because a good man died. You're here like trying to have a cat fight with me or something. Like, what are you doing? And to me, it really, in front of a jury, it's very clear to me who wins this exchange. And that's not good for Lori Vallow because Nancy Joe's life is not on trial.
So in your text messages, you asked Charles if he was a good kisser. Is that correct?
Maybe, sure.
Did he answer that text message?
I'm
gonna
sure.
object to
I'm sure he did.
relevance. Again, 611 harassment.
I'll sustain the objection for relevance.
And I'm glad the judge did that. So the jury's hearing sustained for relevance, not harassment. But like the good kisser thing, it's not relevant at all. Number one, she's like trying to embarrass her. I don't understand. And again, that's somebody only in Lori Vallow's position, that somebody else would be embarrassed about something in this courtroom, right? But that's what she's trying to do. Oh, you asked if he's a good kisser. He's married to me. He's my husband. Did you know he was married? Basically, you know, you're going out with married men talking about how good they are at kissing. That's what Lori Vallow is trying to set up here. Assassinate this lay witness's character. And frankly, also, if I was the defense attorney, this witness was not interviewed for like 2 years. And she sought out law enforcement to tell them what Charles Vallow told her. Is it reliable? Is it not? You can attack that. You wanted to insert yourself into this case. You tried to. You did X, Y, and Z. As a defense attorney, there was some potential ground to cross-examine this witness. Instead, Lori Vallow did the exact opposite and made this witness a very important and good witness for the state.
And hearsay.
So are you trying to tell me and this jury that you went on one date with my husband and he told you all the details of our lives?
I'm telling you the truth, and that's what I know.
So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me.
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you.
How does the judge not crack a smile there? Like, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, you've got to be composed and not like I feel like that had to be tough. So you spent your whole date talking about me. Don't flatter yourself. It's like, oof. So like, what do you think the jury's thinking? Because they're just normal people. They're not like poised and ready for anything like a judge or a lawyer may be. Oof.
You knew a lot about me, right?
I knew what I've testified to.
What else did you talk about on your date?
Lots of things.
Like what, for instance?
Life, kids, the church, lots of things.
Okay. Did he tell you about anything about our other 4 children?
Yes,
So you knew that we did have 5 children as well?
I did.
Okay. Did he talk to you about my daughter Tylee?
He did.
Did he talk about his relationship with her?
I don't recall that.
Did he talk about the contention in his relationship with my daughter Tylee?
I don't recall that.
I'm sure you don't.
And I'm going to object to comments by the defendant made after questions testifying.
Let's sustain the objection.
On your
Multiple times she has done that throughout the trial, and the state has objected a lot to it.
date, you talked about my husband was a life insurance salesman. Is that correct?
I knew he did something with money and insurance, but I really didn't know the details of what he did for work. Like I said, I don't ask the details about what someone does for work when I'm trying to get to know someone.
But you knew that he sold life insurance. You stated that.
I believe that I had a vague understanding that he did something with insurance.
And then he brought that up again at dinner.
No, we didn't talk about his work at dinner.
I thought you said you did talk about, correct me if I'm wrong, you said you did talk about that he changed the life insurance policy at dinner.
Well, you were asking me if we talked about that he sold insurance, which that didn't happen. But yes, he did tell me that he changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy at dinner.
Did he tell you how much?
It's a very weird thing to talk about, right? They met each other like July 3rd. They went on a date July 10th and he dies July 11th. And we're supposed to believe this lady knows everything about his life. Again, all things a good criminal defense lawyer can really bring out and say, really? You met the 3rd, you went out one time on the 10th, you texted with him, you called, and you know all this. If you told him about life insurance policies of his wife, it's very strange. Very strange. Now, it could absolutely be true. But for defense attorneys poking holes and showing maybe bias and her trying to insert herself, that's how you would attack this witness. And I don't mean attack her personally or anything like that. I mean strategically to show the difference between how a defense lawyer would do this and how Lori Vallow did it is just light years difference. And this is the witness that it's most just so apparent that she screwed it up. And you don't know when it's going to come if you're a pro se defendant, just FYI. You don't know which witness is going to piss you off, which witness is going to say the wrong thing about your husband, your kid, your friend, you, your religion, that you're just going to go in there and all you're going to do is see red and you're going to blow it. And the jury's going to notice it and they're going to hate you. You just never know when it's going to come. But most trials that are about your life, something like that is going to trigger you, which is why you should not represent yourself.
His life insurance policy was for?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
$1 million.
Did he tell you how much my life insurance policy was for?
I do not recall.
You don't recall?
We didn't talk about you very much in that vein.
And again, right there is an opportunity. Oh, you didn't talk about me very much because you just said for hours you talked about me and you know everything about me, right? That would be a good exchange. And Lori Vallow does pick at some of that, right? She picks at, you didn't know him very long. She does pick at, you just said you talked to me for a long. So she does pick at some of it, but just she goes down these roads that are just the wrong move, just the wrong move.
When did you talk to him about me very much then? If it wasn't at dinner, was it in your text messages?
We were talking about what he was going through in the process of separating from you, not about what your life insurance policy was worth. And we talked about you.
You talked about what his life insurance policy was worth, right? It's like, it's not that weird of a question for her to ask, what's my life insurance policy if you know his?
On the phone. And when I say you, meaning what he was doing as he was going through this separation.
So let me understand. You were dating some different men on this website, right? From the websites.
Sure.
Would you say it was common for men to be talking so much about their supposed ex-wives during their conversations with a potential?
It's actually very common.
And again, you're asking questions you don't know the answer to. I have no clue if it's common or not. So for her to say it's common, it's like she's the one that's been on the dating website. So I don't know. The rural juror said, Lori Vallow definitely opened the door to the kids going missing and their deaths with the next witness. I can't believe the prosecution didn't kick it open and run through it. So here's what I'll say. I do think that the state wants to be careful, because if they do really run through it and bring up the old kid, you bring up the deaths of her kids, she's cooked, she's getting convicted 100 times out of 100. If you think you're winning and you can win without that, that's better, because that'll be a major appellate issue. She's a pro se defendant. Did you as the state and you as the judge protect the process enough to not basically just force her to open the door? And then, and by the way, whatever Nancy Joe was going to say, we'll kind of hold this, but it wasn't going to have to do with the kids, because she didn't know that at the time. That didn't happen at the time of Charles's death. So we will talk a little bit about that. But if you really get into the kids, you're opening up a big appellate issue. So you better be sure that there is no question that she opened the door.
Really?
Really?
Interesting.
And again, Your Honor, I'm
All right.
going to object to the defendant making comments after her questions.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I won't do that again.
All right, please stop.
I'll just ask the questions.
Thank you.
So she knows she's doing it, right? Part of her manipulation, maybe.
So there were some text messages between you and my husband after the dinner on July 10th. Is that correct?
Correct.
What time would those text messages have occurred?
After dinner,
What time?
10:45-ish.
10:45 to what?
I'm not certain, ma'am. After dinner.
10:45 to midnight? Maybe?
I just told you I don't know. Maybe.
What did you discuss in those text messages?
And I'm going to object to relevance again. If there's a specific area.
Sustain.
You testified a minute ago that Charles told you a lot of things about his wife. You didn't say ex-wife, but you said wife. Is that correct?
Okay, sure.
What were a lot of things?
The things that I've testified to.
This witness, by the way, you can clearly tell she knows what she should talk about or can talk about and can't. And she could have forced her way into inadmissible testimony all the time. She could have caused a mistrial. She didn't. She kept trying to give Lori Vallow the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm not supposed to talk about this, Lori. How do you not know that? And I know this. So all the stuff they talk about is, it seems like there's even more there, like some horrible things about Lori Vallow, potentially character assassination that the judge didn't allow in. But she tries to say everything I've testified to. She tries to do everything she can to make sure she's staying within the rules of what she can and can't testify to.
Can you be more specific?
Am I allowed to do a narrative then?
Let's go on sidebar.
Sarah, I don't feel like it is disrespectful if you're talking about the witness. I think she's trying to just not argue with Lori Vallow over stuff that doesn't matter. That would be my guess. So I think they were. I mean, he was living in Texas. She was living in Arizona, but they had worked it out before, and he was looking for a place in Arizona where they're going to work. I don't know anybody's life, right? Definitely seems like, based on the timeline, she was with Chad at the time. But the point is, from this person's perspective, look at her. She's smirking at the jury right now, which is not a good, I didn't even notice this when I watched the first time. That is not a good sign for Lori Vallow, because I will tell you, when jurors start smirking at me or my witnesses or like giving me the nod, like, we get it, we get what you're going through, it ain't good for the other person. But it seems like that would be where the timeline is, Josh. There are some good questions about juror questions and other things I'm going to save until we get to the juror questions. So so now they're going to go to some sidebars. They're going to continue to talk about this. Then they're going to take a long break for lunch. But everybody right now is trying to protect Lori Vallow from wading into water that is damaging to her, inadmissible, and will severely hurt her case. Yet she is not picking up on those hints. This is what advisory counsel is supposed to be there for, and be like, Lori, you don't want to do this. And it doesn't seem like she did it here in court, but maybe she did it at lunch, because we'll see what happens after lunch as well. They send the jury out.
That's about
And they're going to have
meaning
a little discussion here with Lori Vallow without the jurors there, so they can potentially talk about some things that are inadmissible, so the jury doesn't hear it.
was along the lines of the last question the defendant asked of the witness was along the lines of what things did you discuss about me, meaning the defendant? Is that correct?
That's what I
Yes.
recall, Your Honor.
Are you sure you wanted to answer that question? Because you're open up.
That's like when I play chess with Maverick and he makes a move where, like, it's obviously not a good move from him. I'm like, are you sure you want to move there, Maverick? And he's like, no, I think I'll try again. He picks up on it. Lori Vallow is not picking up on that. Are you sure you want to ask that?
A really big door. If you want her to answer the question, I'll have her answer the question.
How am I supposed to know what a lot of things are?
All right. If you want her to answer the question and there's no objection from the state, we'll
No
bring
objection.
the jury back in and have her answer the question.
State's like, fine with us, Judge. Go ahead and let her.
All right. Let's bring the jury in.
Hours and hours, hundreds of text messages, phone calls, and the date about talking about Lori Vallow. My guess is she had Lori Vallow threatened me. Lori Vallow did this. They're planning something. All this speculation and stuff that Charles was talking about some other people with, the issues Charles had, how horrible Lori was, all of that is probably what they're not letting her get into on the stand as far as her discussions with Charles. So opening the door to all of their conversations about Lori is bad for Lori, And the judge has already found that it is not going to be admissible. Siobhan also said, you think like a lawyer, so you think like a juror for a living, like a lawyer. Give us your thoughts on how they took Nancy's tone, sad tone about JJ, his death on the news, etc. Please. I think, based on that smirk, because I don't see the jury, so it's kind of hard for me to tell you how a jury's reacting without seeing them. But based on that smirk, if they're with Nancy and they feel like, same girl, we're with you, like we feel like this is brutal and like she's a jealous wife who wants all the attention and she keeps calling her husband, even though we know that her last name is Daybell now, and they've already heard that name as somebody she was potentially having an affair with. My guess is Lori Vallow was not dead in the water prior to this witness. I think she had made some points. I think the state had done like okay, not amazingly well. They're laying a lot of background. They're finally getting into, like, one of the later witnesses of the day testified that Alex Cox said at a different time he wanted to end Charles Vallow's life. Those are the important connections they're going to have to start bringing in to show an actual crime was committed, not whether CPR was done or things like that, where everybody was standing. So they're still building foundation. They haven't hit it out of the park. They've definitely not proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt. They've given a good, solid motive, but now it's really developing. Now they're seeing Lori Vallow. The generally bad guy rule is now being applied to Lori Vallow. Is the jury looking over there at her like, seriously? I don't know, like a lot of the country does that's been following all of her cases. I think there is a chance after this witness that that's exactly how the jury is looking at Lori Vallow. I just don't know the answer because I haven't seen the jury. All right. So after all that, it seemed like she was going to open the door and walk right through it. We take a break for lunch and she doesn't. So I don't know if standby counsel at that point was like, hey, don't do this. You don't want to do this. Trust me, you shouldn't do this. The rural juror says, I don't know if we'll go over it today, but this is the only one we're going to go over today. With the next witness, Lori Vallow basically asks her why the witnesses reached out to Kay during the time the kids were missing. Yes, and I do remember that, but that doesn't necessarily open the door. There's some discussion about it. There's going to have to be some that's very far from opening the door. Really has to be her using the kids as her defense, which I think she has started to kind of do, or say like Charles was abusive. There's different ways I think she could potentially open the door that I can't get into right now because I want to get to this cross and we don't have a ton of time because we've got about 30 minutes left. But we will talk about that. How can she possibly open the door, and if it happens throughout this trial?
Hey, Brooke, you said that you had seen on TV that my husband had passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you indicated after that you saw my sister-in-law, Kay Woodcock, on that show and you reached out to her. Is that correct?
I didn't indicate that, but that is correct. I reached out to Kay after I saw that Charles had died.
Okay. And did you do that through Facebook or?
I did.
Social media? Okay. How many times between that first contact and now have you and Kay Woodcock communicated?
I've spoken to her just once. I've texted her here and there.
So we're about to hear how she reached out to the cops. She reached out to Kay Woodcock. She went up to Adam Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, at a pickleball tournament recently. So see if you can do this, right? We're going to do it in hypotheticals, which you're allowed to do with experts, and you guys are expert jurors at this point. So we're going to do it. Assuming a defense lawyer was standing at the podium and they're like, you reached out to the cops about this case, right? Nobody reached out to you. You reached out to Kay Woodcock. You reached out to Adam. You wanted to be a witness in this case. You inserted yourself here, right? Would that have been decent at poking the holes in the credibility of this witness to try and show some kind of bias. Would that have worked for you, or do you think this witness is just too likable and too honest and you were going to believe what they said? It's a difficult hypothetical, but I think there were ways to turn this witness into, más o menos, right? Like, yeah, take it or leave it, here or there, decent, okay, not an amazing witness for the state. I do think that that is possible.
Regarding, I've texted her here and there about other things. I don't know what I can say.
Okay. How many times have you texted her?
I have no idea.
Like more than 10?
Maybe.
Okay. Have you ever turned over those communications to the state?
No.
You know what, Francis? You're right. And that's coming up, the correction of how she actually met Lori's brother, but I'll hold that till we get there, because you're right.
Did they ask you for them?
No.
Okay. Did you ever turn over the text conversations you had with my husband to the state?
I was never asked, but I understand that they retrieved them via having them through Charles Club.
Okay.
I would have had I been asked.
Okay. Did you turn over any other communications that you had with anyone else regarding this case to the state?
I don't believe I've had any other regarding this case to turn over to anybody, so no.
Okay. How many times have you spoken to this prosecutor?
To Ms. Kay,
Yes, to Ms. Kay.
I met with her once in person and one other phone call, and then just text messages about the logistics of being here today.
Okay. How many text messages would you say?
I have no idea.
More than 10?
I know court was running behind, so she had to text me to come at a different time. Probably counting yesterday and today to redo the time, more than 10, yes. Prior than that, probably no.
Okay. Did you have a meeting with her to prepare for this testimony?
I met with her once,
How long was that meeting?
an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Was anyone else there?
No.
Have you ever spoken to my brother, Adam?
All right, so here's where another very strange thing happens, right? Like right when you think it's weird and it can't get weirder, it does. This is the story of Lori Vallow. And I answered how she answers first, because that's how I remembered it. That's the first way I heard it. But then the correction is even weirder than the initial answer.
Yes, but only because I ran into him at my grandson's pickleball tournament the other day.
And how did you know
That's why I thought she had run into him or met him at the pickleball tournament.
that was him?
Because I've seen him on media via the situation surrounding you.
And I do appreciate Nancy Jo, by the way. I think she is really careful to not say something that is going to be prejudicial and inadmissible. But a lot of talk about media in this cross-examination. It's been all over TV. I saw your brother in media talking about this case. So when they see him come, it depends on how the jurors think, right? If I was a juror and I'm hearing all this talk about media and I hear them say the brother was out on media all the time, and then he comes and testifies against Lori Vallow, I'm going to be like, so obviously the media is against Lori Vallow, right?
So you initiated a conversation with him?
I just said hi, and he asked me who my grandson was, and I pointed it out, and that was the end of it.
Okay, so people think, and I don't know this, podcast, meaning he has his own podcast, so it has nothing to do with this?
So you introduced yourself to him? To my brother?
I don't know that I introduced myself, but maybe.
How would he know who you were?
I don't know that he knew who I was. I knew who he was.
So Again, she's really digging in here, which is what makes it very weird when the turn comes of how she actually met him.
So you went up and talked to him?
I did talk with him, yes.
He didn't call you over, so you went up and talked to him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you were talking to him, you told him you were who?
I told him that my name was Nancy Jo Hancock.
And did he recognize that name from something?
Can I go back and change how I met your brother? I forgot this until right now. So
Yikes. Like, that's not great. And again, defense lawyer would have a heyday with this, to me. I think they would have a heyday with her being like, hold on a second. Now that I've given you like 20 answers of how I interacted with your brother, let me go back and tell you the truth, is what it sounded like, right? She botches it. Lori Vallow just completely botches how she tries to deal with it.
So on a dating app, got this until right now. So on a dating app, your brother's picture came up on my dating app. And I sent him a message and said, but he had a different name that he used, not Adam. And so I just sent him a message and said if he was going to use someone else's pictures, he should probably pick someone different than Adam Cox.
Which again is a bit of a rip. Like, to me, like, maybe you don't want to be associated with all that. Barb, completely irrelevant, which made me think, why did this happen this way? Sometimes it does, and lawyers can have a heyday with it. Like I said, that's a mistake by the witness. And she says it was catfishing. Was it actually catfishing? I think it, and again, because of how weird and confusing the story is, I think it actually was him.
That's how I met him.
That's how you met my brother, Adam?
Correct.
Do you know what perjury is?
Absolutely.
I object, Your Honor.
You know what perjury is? Absolutely. That's not what you do. That's not what you do, right? And yet, of course, that's how Lori Vallow tries to handle this situation. When she's finally given something that could be good for her defense, she totally botches it. Sustained objection. Jury's not supposed to consider it. Of course they did hear it, but it's totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant.
Next question.
Argumentative, harassment.
Argumentative.
How long was this conversation that you had with my brother at the pickleball tournament?
A couple of minutes, maybe less.
And how many times had you communicated with him before that?
Only that message on that dating app. Besides that,
One message, one time?
I don't remember. I think he messaged me back, and it didn't continue.
So just the one day then? Maybe several messages in one day?
I might have sent him one other message, but it was just one interaction, and there was nothing further.
And you did not schedule a date with him?
I did not.
Okay. Have you ever spoken to Brandon?
She was going to go through the whole like, oh, my brother, you schedule a date with him. Let's go through why that's relevant or not in this case. Miss Artemis Fowl, how is it possible to bring in statements of deceased people? So there is an exception to hearsay if the declarant is unavailable, and that's one of the reasons, but you can't use it if you are the one charged with making them unavailable, right? So there's still a balancing. Just because you have that exception doesn't mean everything comes in. So it still has to be probative or more probative than prejudicial, and there's still all the other rules of evidence that affect that. Peter, what about when she tries to blame Tylee for the shooting? Then can I bring up what happened to her? Not necessarily when you say blame her, if she was the one trying to be protected, and if they have statements from Tylee that back that up, that's not opening the door.
Have you ever spoken to Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
Okay, when?
He attends the same church that my daughter does, and he happened to be at their house briefly, and I didn't really speak to him. I just knew that that's who he was.
And how did you know who he was?
Because my daughter told me.
It's very obvious to the jury, this is like a bit of, fame. Like there's some fame here to the Lori Vallow situation on the media, podcast, news, TV. People know him. You point him out at pickleball tournaments and whatever it may be. And you're like, I know this person. I know that person. Brandon Boudreaux is the victim in the next trial that is coming up for Lori Vallow once this one ends. What are the boundaries of advisory council? They're different in kind of every state, and I've never done it before, but generally speaking, they can't try the case, but they can tell them like, this is probably bad for you. This is what this means. But they can't be like they shouldn't be like, object to this question. Questions asked, objection, hearsay, like you would do with your partner at a trial. They shouldn't necessarily do that or try the case for them. It's really supposed to be to make sure that the client doesn't completely screw up. And when she's prepping and she has certain questions, you can ask them. Some advisory counsel's like, I'm not going to talk to you at all unless something big comes up. So it's a little bit different depending on the situation. I actually feel more for Kay Woodcock. It's got to be brutal to look Lori Vallow in the face, knowing what she did to you and to your life and to people you loved. And I mean, I'm not going to go any further than that. Just say it's got to be so incredibly brutal for Kay Woodcock to have to put through this. I feel like Lori Vallow will be able to, gaslight and be like, oh, it's no big deal to me. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe she'll go unhinged. And maybe this will turn into legit Jerry Springer. At times during yesterday, I was feeling this too, Leslie.
Who did she say he was
Brandon Boudreaux.
in relation to me?
She knows the story and I know the story. So she just had to tell me that his name was Brandon Boudreaux.
That he was married to my niece? Is that the information that you had?
I know that he was married to your niece, yes.
Okay. Just the association is all I was asking. And you did speak to him that time?
Well, I don't believe I spoke with him.
Okay. But you met him?
Or I don't know that I even met him. I was there. He was there with some other people, and I knew that that's who that was.
So you didn't introduce yourself to him?
I did not.
Okay.
What's the point of all this? If you're trying to create a bias and that she's inserting herself and making sure she knows everybody involved and getting famous off of this case, and this case is in the media, in podcasts, on TV, so you're making sure you're not just talking to Charles Vallow, but you're becoming a witness in the case, getting streamed so everybody can watch you. You're meeting Brandon Boudreaux, Adam Cox. Like if you're building that, it can be relevant as towards bias. Lori Vallow is not really going anywhere with it. So I get why people are like, I don't even get the point of this.
Did you speak to any other law enforcement besides Miss K? Not that she's law enforcement, but did you speak to any other law enforcement about this case or be interviewed?
Yes.
Who? Who did you speak with?
Detective Moffett is who interviewed me.
I agree, Kayla. I think her advisory council is helping her a ton.
I believe that's... I might have left a message for him. I couldn't tell you who with, but the only one that I spoke to was Detective Moffett, Nathan Moffett.
And when was that interview?
In 2020, I believe in April. A long time ago.
Okay. How long was that interview about?
It was a telephone interview and it lasted 45 minutes, I'd say.
Is that the only law enforcement that you spoke to besides the prosecutor?
Yes.
And how long between that interview with Detective Moffett and your first communications with Ms. K, how much time passed in between there?
With Trina K?
Correct.
I met with her just a month ago, 5 weeks ago, and I gave an interview in 2020, so.
Is that the first communication you had with Ms. K was 5 weeks ago? Ms. Hancock, were you aware at the time of your date that I did not know that my husband was on dating websites and dating women?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
She's also testifying to what she knew at the time. That's a good one right there. Like the fact that she came back around to that question. Jackie T said, do you think Lori Vallow was trying to get her to slip up before Smith trial? So total speculation on my part, if I just had to guess, Jackie, I think Lori Vallow wanted to fight with this woman and be like, you're a bad person for dating my husband. I'm a good person. All you guys did was talk about me. He didn't care about you. He just cared about me. That's why he was talking about me. He went on dating apps that I didn't even know about. And you're over here going out on dates talking about, are you a good kisser? When he's talking about me the whole, that's what I think she wanted to do. And this gave her the opportunity to do that. Most criminal defendants who are, on trial for their life don't get the opportunity to do that. She got the opportunity and she took it.
Were you informed by him that I knew of the situation of us being separated?
Well, he was under the impression you were having an affair, so him moving on was a natural effect from.
That's now in evidence, folks, that Charles Vallow believed Lori Vallow was having an affair. I mean, I don't remember if it came into evidence or not before, but during Lori Vallow. So why did the prosecution call this witness? Well, it would have been good enough to call this witness just to testify that Lori Vallow was having an affair. Now it's in, thanks to Lori Vallow's questions. That is bad.
From that?
He told you that?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Just to recap, you said that you met my husband Charles, on July 3rd. Is that correct?
Approximately. Did you ever take a day?
And you went on a date with him on July 10th.
Correct.
So that was what, 7 days later?
Approximately.
So would it be fair to say that you knew my husband for a week?
Approximately.
Okay. And then you had no contact with Charles after that, correct?
Well, he was dead, so clearly I didn't have contact with him.
Again, like, what kind of a question is that? And again, a perfect, quick answer. Like, no, I couldn't because of you.
Okay. And it wasn't until you saw that he had passed away on the news that you reached out to anyone. Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't know he was dead.
And that was about 6 months later? Is that correct?
I believe it was December, so July to December is 5 months, I believe.
Okay. And then you found Charles' sister, Kay Woodcock, my sister-in-law, yes?
Objection asked and answered.
I'm just going over the timeline, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
So when is the then you're referring to?
So at the 5 months later that you said in December, after that is when you contacted Kay Woodcock?
To express my condolences for her brother passing away and wanted to let her know that I had had dinner with him that last night and how much he loved JJ and how excited he was to see him the next morning. And just.
Thank you. That's enough.
I think that was Lori. We're only looking at the back of the heads, but thank you. That's enough. In the middle of her talking nicely about Charles, which Karen said, this witness personalized Charles for me. That's got to make you cringe as a jury, right? Talking good about the victim who you keep calling your husband, and you crack the whip to stop that.
How much he loved JJ and how excited he was to see him the next morning. And just.
Thank you. That's enough.
Even the witness like smirked like, wow, you are really something special, right? Like you are something special. And I my vibe is the jury's probably feeling the same way, but that's brutal.
I'm just recapping here, and you contacted her through Facebook, is that correct?
And again, asked and answered.
I don't think that was actually asked yet. Overruled. Go ahead.
Yes, as I said before, I contacted her through Facebook.
Okay.
A smart witness always says, yes, I've already said that. Yes, I did contact her through Facebook.
And then sent a few text messages, is that correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
This is recap of everything we've already gone through.
The state's like, yeah, you can't recap. Like recapping and summarizing and asking the same things over is literally not allowable under the rules. That's asked and answered. It's cumulative. We don't need it. We don't do it. She doesn't understand that because she's not a lawyer, but judge, we need to shut this down.
And then you said you met with police on April 22nd, 2020, is that correct?
I didn't say April 22nd. I said I believed it was sometime in April.
Okay,
And I didn't meet with them. It was a telephone interview.
okay. And that was around 1 year after my husband passed away, is that correct?
Well, July to April would be 10 months, so.
No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, redirect.
And on redirect, she hits a couple points, but doesn't go too far because Lori just did her own damage. We are going to get to the question the jury had for her. And finally, Buzzman, I know you sent this very early on. Peter, is it normal for the jury to be able to ask questions? That was strange. Much love from Louisiana. It's really jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And we've gone through what states allow it, what states don't. Very normal for me. Florida allows it. I love it. Throughout the trial, you get to know where the jury's thinking, where their head is. I've literally used juror questions to prep future witnesses. I write every single one of them down. So during closing argument, I try to hit on the things that are important to the jury because who cares what I think, right? We're all there to care about what the jury thinks and what the jury is going to decide. I love juror questions.